Over the last decade, the team and I at Exposure Ninja have generated over 100,000 B2B leads for ourselves and our clients. B2B lead generation is its own beast. You might be dealing with really long sales cycles and selling to people who aren't actually the decision maker. So today we're going to look at 3 B2B marketing strategies that you can use whatever you're selling and whoever you're selling to. They include being really helpful via content marketing, repurposing like a beast, and a really cool version of thought leadership. These 3 strategies can form the central pillar of your B2B marketing, and you can build everything else that you do off them. So I'm also going to show you how to take each one to another level by plugging something in. And if you're a real monster, they all work together, so you can actually use all 3 at the same time. But first, let's talk about the mindset of a killer B2B marketer. In B2B, buying cycles can be long. This can be because of the cost, but also because of the number of people that you need to convince in the organization. We've had B2B clients where we've had to convince the user, their manager's manager, and company leadership. If any one of these people isn't convinced that this thing is a good thing to buy, you don't get the sale. We as marketers have a role to play in this. Let me show you an example. Here's someone on Reddit crying out for help. How do I convince my co-workers to use Salesforce? In this case, this person's company has already been sold Salesforce. They are responsible for doing the training, but their team sees Salesforce as a complicated tool. It's great to see these objections out in the open, but for many of us, we won't actually see people talking about these objections. These are conversations that will be happening inside the business. As marketers, we need to be there handling these objections in our marketing. So what Salesforce's marketing team needs to do is make sure that they're producing marketing material that sells to each one of these different customers through the org chart. Now they've had a go at this. Let's have a look. So firstly, we've got these industry pages on the Salesforce website. For example, here's Salesforce for Automotive, talking about how great Salesforce is for automotive businesses. They've got customer success stories from each industry, and they've optimized the content on this page to rank for automotive search phrases. So that's how they're trying to handle the objection that Salesforce might not work in their industry. But what about for people at different stages of the org chart? Well, on their blog, you'll see they've got content targeting C-suite, the IT department, and the admin team. If we're going to be honest though, some of this content looks really boring and not the sort of thing that's going to excite these different stakeholders to get them invested in Salesforce. What we as marketers really need to do is think about the potential objections that each person at each stage in the organization is going to have. We then need to build the answers to these objections in all of the marketing material that we're producing. To give you an example, we are often contacted by marketing managers that have read our books or listened to the podcast or watched a video about Exposure Ninja, and they're really excited to work with us. But when they take that decision back to their manager says, we've tried agencies in the past, it really hasn't worked. So we have to make sure that our marketing material translates well enough to that person, so that when they're shown, but look, this agency's different, and they watch a video, that really comes across. And we've actually produced dedicated content to help our audience, the marketing managers, get buy-in from their management. To make sure that this content is effective, you need to make sure you understand the language that the ultimate decision maker is going to be using. You also need to know what type of information they're going to need to get to a decision. Maybe case studies are going to be really beneficial for them, or taking a free trial, or having some sort of satisfaction guarantee. And this approach is sort of a universal filter that we need to apply to every piece of marketing that we do. We need to make sure that it translates when it's passed on to the ultimate decision makers in the organization. Okay, now we've got that mindset in place, let's talk about our first strategy, cunningly titled Being Really Helpful Through Content Marketing. So many businesses struggle with what to publish. They know they should be publishing content, information on their website, information on their socials, but they really don't know what to publish. In fact, we can see it on the Salesforce blog here. Like, some of this stuff is really weird and you think, who on earth is the target audience for any of this? But content marketing shouldn't be difficult. The overall plan with any content marketing should be figure out who our target audience is and then figure out what information they need to get closer to their goals. In B2B, this is looking good and doing a really good job at work so they get promotion or they make their company more money. For example, we've got a client that sells takeaway packaging. the stuff that restaurants use to put their food in when people order takeaways. Now, the owners of takeaways aren't necessarily industry experts in takeaway packaging, so the types of information that we've published on their website have been things like helping them get to grips with new regulations around the materials used in packaging, or how to make sustainable packaging policies. We're just trying to help that person do a better job in their business. And of course, when we talk about those things, they match the sorts of things that our target audience is going to be searching for. They find our website, they see, oh wow, this is really useful information, and oh, they also sell the packaging. Great. Now, this type of content marketing has become more competitive as lots more businesses do it. Then of course, we've got Google's AI overviews entering the fray. With AI overviews, Google is actually showing AI generated answers in its search results. So answers to really basic questions are just going to be answered directly in the search results. This doesn't mean that being helpful and writing the sort of content that your potential customers are going to search for is obsolete though. We've seen how AI overviews can be really powerful at driving traffic through to websites if you're ranking in the AI overview panel. And that traffic can have more commercial intent because it's already started doing some of the research actually in the search results. The key to building a future-proof content strategy is to make sure that you're ticking the EEAT boxes. These are expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trust. These are 4 principles shared by Google, which it uses to denote good quality content. These principles are also used in its search quality rater guidelines. The area that most B2B companies fall down on is sharing their direct experience in their content. A lot of companies will just publish generic information, which really doesn't make the most of the fact that this business has done a lot of work and has a lot of experience in the area. It's also really important to demonstrate your knowledge and expertise on the page itself. So for example, here we've got a blog post written for a client, and this is a medical topic, so we need to make sure that the client is shown as the author of this, and we need to build their credibility through showing all of the different qualifications and the memberships that they have. That demonstrates authority to readers and Google. Now you might be thinking, yeah Tim, great, we need to publish content, but what type of content do we publish? Like if we're posting on our website, does it need to be long? Does it need to be short? Do we need to publish on social media? Do we need to make videos like you? Well, your decision here really depends on your audience and the stages of the funnel that you're targeting. Well, I don't mean this to sound like a cop-out, but your decision here actually depends on your audience and the stages of the funnel that you're targeting. For example, targeting search by writing content on your website optimized for the keywords that your customers are searching for can be fantastic if people know what they're looking for, if they know that they've got a problem. But sometimes B2B businesses are selling something that customers don't know they need, in which case you might need to try a different strategy. For example, we worked with a client for many years that sold HR software. This software helps companies manage their employees' performance, but rather than doing this on a one-off KPI thing, it did it continually through the year. The challenge is that businesses don't know that they need this, right? KPIs are just a normal way of doing things, so why would we need to change them? So people weren't necessarily searching for what this business did. So we got around this in 3 ways. Firstly, we used thought leadership, which we're actually going to come back to a little bit later on. Secondly, we targeted the sorts of topics that their customers thought they needed help with. So maybe they'd heard of a term like continuous performance management, but they didn't really know what it was. So we published definition content to help them get to grips with this new concept. But we also did some digital PR, where we would go out to the sorts of publications that this customer base was reading, for example, HR publications, and we'd publish articles with them about how to improve the performance of your employees, how to get more from your teams, how to better support your teams during difficult periods. In all of these articles, we'd be seeding this topic of continuous performance management. Now, because we'd already written the definition pieces and we got them ranked on Google, when somebody went to Google and searched for continuous performance management, they found our client. This generated tons of business for them, because not only were we out there raising awareness of this new term and this new concept, we were ranking absolutely dominantly on Google, ready to snap up all of that traffic when it was ready to take an action. In some industries, ebooks and white papers are like the go-to. So if that's your vibe, you might need to publish those ebooks and and white papers. My construction business, for example, has customers that can take months or even years to make a decision on who to buy from. So the best CTA, the best thing that we can offer, the best content type we can give them is a downloadable brochure that they can take with them and show to other people in the organization to get them bought in on us as well. Sometimes the content that you create is good enough that you can actually make it a lead magnet, meaning you can ask people for their name and email address in return for downloading it. We did this for one of our B2B commercial cleaning clients, putting together a brochure which they could offer on their website as a secondary call to action for people who weren't ready to get in contact yet. So how do you take this being helpful through content marketing stuff to another level? Well, one of the ways that you can do this is by actually running paid traffic to the free informational content that you've put out. We've worked with a fantastic company that sells office management software, so they help you manage who's coming in and going out of your office. Now, during the pandemic, obviously their world and their clients' world were turned completely upside down. But post-pandemic, lots of their clients and potential clients had to think about something brand new, how to create a hybrid working policy. This was something that they'd never had to do before. So what we did is we created a guide on how to produce a hybrid working policy. This was really useful to their potential clients because they'd never had to do this before. We could give them essentially a copy and paste policy that they could just use straight away. And because of what this business sold, we knew that people in that situation were a really good potential customer. Now, as well as just publishing this on their website, we also ran ads to it. Even though we weren't directly making money from the downloads of this guide, we knew that the people interested in this were so qualified, we would pay money to have them go and visit that page, which is exactly what we did. But publishing information on your website isn't right for everyone. Sometimes you can get a lot more leverage publishing on YouTube or LinkedIn. One of the best ways to find out which are going to be the highest leverage channels for you to publish on is to get a free website and marketing review from the team here at Exposure Ninja. We'll take a look at your business, your competitors, and the marketing that you've already done, and we'll map you out a prioritized action plan that you can follow over the next 6 to 12 months to generate more leads through your website. Now, you do need to apply for this because not every business is eligible. If you want to apply, you can go to exposureninja.com/review. We'll ask you a few questions and we'll let you know, usually within 1 working day, whether or not you're eligible for this free service. If you are, it's amazing. So I definitely recommend going to exposureninja.com/review to request your free website and marketing review today. Okay, let's talk about strategy number 2, and that is a content repurposing blitz. The reality is that content can be expensive and difficult to produce, particularly if you're trying to produce content for multiple different channels, your website, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, emails. There's loads of different channels and each one requires a slightly different approach. The good news is that with a lot of this stuff, you can come up with an original piece of content and then tweak it, optimize it, and repurpose it for all of these different channels. Let me give an example. So last year, we gave some talks at a big B2B marketing event. Now, we'd written a blog post, which we then turned into a video and a podcast, which we then turned into the talk at the event. So we generated hundreds of leads from the talks at that event without having to actually create anything original because we'd already done it. Or sometimes we'll work with a client that's used direct mail and we'll be able to take a direct mail campaign that's been really effective and turn that into a drip email sequence. Or maybe there's an internal sales guide that helps your sales team talk about a certain topic. Well, maybe that could be repurposed and turned into a blog. By taking this repurposing approach, you're able to publish content in different places without multiplying the amount of work involved, because a lot of the work goes into creating the first piece of content, and then it's a relatively shorter process to repurpose and tweak that content to be native on each different platform. In rare cases where you just can't repurpose something, there's still often lessons that you can learn. For example, an email sequence that's performed really well. It might be difficult to turn that into a video, but maybe you can make a video out of the top performing email in that sequence. Now, as well as repurposing content for different channels, you can also repurpose content for different segments of your audience. Remember earlier we talked about needing to sell to the end user and their manager and their manager's manager and company leadership. where you can produce webinars or white papers or guides for each of these different levels of the company, taking an original concept and then just tweaking it to use the language, the pain points, and the desires of the person at that level in the company. Strategy number 3 is thought leadership. Now let's talk about thought leadership. I know that term can bring up pictures of 21-year-old life coaches and shouty public speaking gigs, but that's really not what I'm talking about. When we talk about thought leadership, we're really talking about showing up in the places that your audience is looking for help, being helpful and human. Some of the most effective thought leadership can be about giving your company a human face that people can latch onto, because people latch on to individuals more than they do to a company. That's kind of why I'm here on our YouTube channel, because hopefully I know my stuff and I can share it in a way that connects with Exposure Ninja's audience. Going back to the HR software example earlier, we worked with the founder of that company to build their personal brand around the topics that their company was an expert in. Because we positioned them as a thought leader, we were able to get them visibility in all sorts of publications, getting in front of good quality target customers for them in a way that felt human. He could talk about his experience and stories from being at different organizations and how the performance management was handled. And that was much more compelling than, hey, we're a company and we've got something to sell you. But you do need to be aware of a bit of a thought leadership trap, which is that in some industries, lots of the businesses just copy each other. They think that thought leadership means putting out white papers, and everyone then puts out white papers. But actually, if you talk to the customers in that industry, they never really read the white papers. They much prefer a short personal email instead. So you need to make sure that your strategy here is calibrated to what your customers actually want than to anybody's ego or just copying what competitors are doing. Thought leadership doesn't need to be a one-size-fits-all thing. We spoke recently to Hattie Stiff on our podcast, The Dojo, recently.
I think it's about finding the silver linings in the everyday. But I think also with that comes the authenticity. So as you were saying that, an idea that just popped in my head of going into the office every day seems really boring. And I work from home, so I don't envy that. But I would say it could literally be something as simple as, do you bring lunch into work? Do you go out for lunch? And you could literally do a series on like what my work lunch was today. And it's like series of things that make things seem like other people also do them. So like your customer will eat lunch every day. You eat lunch every day. They want to like, do they want to know what you're eating for lunch every day? I don't know, but like it's little things like that where it might seem really boring and mundane to you, but sometimes it's the boring and mundane that actually makes things seem achievable. And I think if a customer feels like something's been achievable for someone, it could be achievable for them, which boosts them, and then they're like, oh, this guy's cool, I wonder what he sells, and then so on and so forth. So I think like it's about having the balance of making things interesting for the sake of the actually genuinely interesting content, and then making things authentic enough that it can be everyday and still achievable. It doesn't have to be you going out of your comfort zone every day of the week to achieve content. I think if you're gonna have the consistency, you have to find almost like a funny take on something that is common ground for everyone.
And of course, there are different levels of thought leadership. This can be one person having really good visibility in a tiny niche of the market, all the way to examples like Asheville, where Daniel Lucy from Asheville has a huge following on YouTube and Instagram talking about his aggregates business. Now, a tiny fraction of the views on these videos are going to be potential customers, but some of those people will turn to customers one day, and the chances are that all of their potential customers know about Asheville because they just have such huge visibility online. Thought leadership also doesn't mean just one person in the business. After all, what happens if I'm crushed by a giant rubber chicken? It's likely that you'll have different experts in different areas in your business. They might need a bit of help getting their expertise out to your audience, so you might need to interview them or make a video or podcast with them when they don't know. Make a podcast or video with them. Now, one piece of advice here, it really helps if you've got people that are engaging. You'd have no idea the number of people I've spoken to that are more than happy to stand up in front of a room of their employees and talk about whatever, but get them in front of a camera and they just shut down completely. So you do need people that are fairly comfortable in front of a camera if you're going to be videoing them. You do need people who are happy talking on a microphone if you're going to be using them in podcasts. To me, that is as important as the information that they're putting out. If you want to take this to another level, you can actually use thought leadership as a fantastic way to build links and get digital PR coverage. Remember the HR software company that I've spoken about throughout? So we use that founder's thought leadership and personal brand to get loads of coverage on sites like Inc., Forbes, and a whole bunch of HR trade publications because they knew about the founder. We built their brand into something that was well known in their space, which meant that we could get articles published, we could get links back to their website, which really helped boost their visibility. That helped their website's ranking and it helped them dominate for their main target keyword, which 9 years after starting that campaign, they are still dominant for today. So there you have it, 3 B2B marketing strategies and a mindset that you can use to move those leads through the sales pipeline. Next up, you might want to build your own marketing strategy using these tools from scratch. Check out this video to see exactly how to do it.